All right. Get ready. So, what time is it?
It's right now.
Right now. So, welcome to a new episode of Rite Now Radio. This will be our first episode tonight, and I'm your host, Rashad Robinson. And I have Miss Barbara Phipps who will be joining us tonight. We'll be discussing a few topics, including our IT background, some of our career highlights, few current events, and also how they relate to us. And also, I want to discuss a few technology trends because a lot of my friends and group members are really trying to find out how to gain security clearances when they first starting out
Mhm.
their careers. But I know right now, since you've had over 30 years experience in your career, I want you to kind of just give us a good highlight about how you got started. And also too, what sparked your interest to pursue IT career?
Those are great questions, and thanks for having me on your podcast. I
Oh,
appreciate
absolutely.
it. And congratulations on everything that you're endeavoring to do, and
Thank
how you got your hands involved in not only the technology but building a community around you. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
you. Yes, ma'am.
Um, Actually, I went to school. My major was political science,
Mm,
and so when I landed in Washington D.C., my first job was to assist a business planning team for the headquarters of the United States Army Corps of Engineers. And if you know the Corps of Engineers, especially in the South and on the
right.
coastlands, they build the dams and they deal with all those structures. And so I was at the headquarters and I was in support of these six gentlemen. They were in charge of, some of them were military, general officers, one-star general, and then the others were selected executives. So they were over entire directorates, over, you know, the different branches within the Corps. And they were planning what they wanted to do with information technology. In that time they called them business systems, for the next 35 to 40 years. They were planning out how they were going to structure sharing information. And in a political environment, there was always the situation of how money is allocated. Okay, so if one group of civil engineers directorate had information that they had hired contractors and built the systems to create that for them, then you had others who were responsible for the real estate section of the Corps. And
Mhm.
they had their own contractors and their own mainframe systems with their own data. And so they were trying to figure out how to make all of this work together and building giant matrices of who was a user, who was a creator, who had the power to edit, who had the power to delete, and who would be the contractor to manage all of that and to make all of that happen. That's where I landed as a 20-something-year-old, not ready for prime time, didn't know anything about anything, and I was the sole doorkeeper, gatekeeper. They blocked out everything, and any information that came to them or through them or for them had to pass over my desk. So I got to see things from a top-down perspective very early on. And the first thing that I realized was the most important currency was information.
Wow.
It
That's
wasn't money, it wasn't political power, it
mm,
was the information. And at that time, they had to figure out literally if their secretaries should have a computer on their desk. I mean, that's how early on it
mm.
was. These were people that were used to using typewriters. Okay. And so here I am saying to them, no, we all have to grow together. Like, this all has to happen. You can't have this information sitting in one section and not share it with others. And
Right.
when I stepped on the scene, literally you went to a room, you wrote out a piece of paper and said, this is the report that I need.
Mm,
And because I wore the stars of my general, I worked directly for him. I got my stuff expedited, but that could still be a couple of hours later. And then I would come back and they would print out a report. It was a mainframe system and they had people who did this computing work for us. We didn't do it. There were no computers on your desk. And so that's where I started. And I was responsible for making sure that any new technology that was available out there in the commercial private sector landed on the desk of my 1-star and then eventually my 4-star general that I worked directly for. So we had to bring in the experts to say, this is what we're going to do. So that's where I got started with it. And my career took that turn to information technology. And because I was there at the start, and I didn't put this in my little write-up for you, but right before I retired in 2017, I had spent 4 years with Apple as a tier 2 tech. So I had been
Wow.
doing all of this all of my life, right up until 2017. So I've seen a lot, a lot of changes, a lot of changes. And so that's how I made the change. I made the switch because I knew that there was no turning back once you see where we
I
were
feel the
going with
same
it.
way. Let me
Yeah.
ask you, so what type of reports were you responsible for during that time?
What type of what now?
What type of reports were you responsible
What I was responsible for doing for that team was they were interviewing all the people who they shared information with. And that was across branches of within the Corps of Engineers
for?
and within all the other Department of Defense agencies. So we were bringing people in from the Pentagon constantly in and out to ask them in what kind of information they needed, what did they use it for, et cetera, and so forth. And the information that they already had, how could they now mesh that together? And so because of that, there were tons of reports that were just giant charts. And you had lists of users, lists of agencies. It was giant matrices, huge. And
Mm-hmm.
then I basically wallpapered the walls with them so that they could walk up and see who's who and what's what. But we just had a constant stream of people coming and going. And then on top of that, we had consultants who literally sat down and was like a recorder, like a they she typed up the minutes of every meeting, and then she had to bring that to me, and I had to make sure that got disseminated, and then keep all of those records in place so that they could see the history of what was being done. Because of course all of this lands, if you've ever watched a congressional hearing, and they'll have these gentlemen sitting at a desk with a microphone and they're speaking to Congress about what they're doing with their agencies and how they're allocating the money, how they're dealing with security, all that sort of thing. If you notice, there's always a small cadre of people sitting behind them to
Mm-hmm.
feed them all the information and feed them all the
I
answers.
have noticed that. I
Right.
noticed
So
that mostly like,
those are us. That's what we did. We were the ones back there making sure they had all the information and the papers and the answers, because
so
you can't let your guy show up and not have all the answers. And so,
hey,
it's
so
on you.
I'm guessing y'all got the people counting like on C-SPAN, the people that sit in the back, those little
It's
5, 6
all,
people.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. They have a small little army around them that has all the answers. And we had something that, this is going to sound ridiculous, but we had what's called a murder board. And a murder board
What
is
is
when
that?
you stand up where you're going to present, if you're going to present any kind of presentation, and you have a team that you work with who sit there and try to just poke holes in everything that you're saying. So it's just like they equate that to like standing in front of a wall and having people shoot shots at you, because you're trying to tear them down and shoot them down, and shoot holes in everything that they're saying to make sure that they're expert enough to have the answers when they're really on, at the desk, with an open mic. So yeah, so that's where that's where I started.
I got a
Yeah.
question. Like I said, does that job still exist today?
Um, they have evolved, and I can say in the time that I've moved along, what happened early on actually still happens, but it happens um in a different setting, because we're global now and we're virtual now. right? And so much of it now is visual, and a lot of it is AI. So you still have to have someone that branches between the systems engineers and you guys who do all the, the pulling of the cables and getting everything connected and taking the system down and cleaning everything out and whatever has to be done and setting up users and removing users and monitoring security, like the guys who are keeping everything humming. And then you have people like me who follow along and help with all of the installs, but then have to sit at the table and explain to people, this is how it works. You don't need to be afraid of it. It's not going to steal your information. It's not, like, so there has to be that interface. And that's where I always sat. I always was the interface between what was going on the technology side and what we were bringing in and how the end user was going to actually apply it. And so when I was in the room with the engineers, I could say, that works great, but this screen is going to really confuse them. You have to make this a little easier for them to understand. Or that's not how they look at it, when that's not how they're going to use the information. So you have to change this in a way that is going to make it useful for them when they pull a report. Then when I'm with the end user, I have to explain to them, there's a reason why they have to take the system down at night, because blah, blah, blah. This is why you need to back up your information. This is why you have to change your password. This is why, this is why we have to have, shared network resources. Like, so there still has to be that person. That person still has to exist out there. But the difference now is we have so many different tools to do that. And a lot of people now are so used to using technology. You have so much computing power in your hip pocket now. So it's not as, you don't have that initial pushback. People are expecting you now to be able to do everything for them. So when you say, I need you to do that, like, isn't there an app? Can't you just put that in the app? Why do I have to, like, why do I have to remember passwords? I don't have to, put all my passwords in the cloud, so everything now, everyone expects sit in the cloud, but you still have to have that person who understands both sides of the situation.
Right. So, a question about that. So now with the rise of cloud computing and artificial intelligence, now cloud computing is really become more prevalent in all regions of the United States right now. But I'm very curious about artificial intelligence. And what areas do you think those jobs are more so present in the year 2023? Or you
Wow,
think
that's a
it's like
great question.
you think it's more prevalent in on the East Coast, North, on the West Coast? Because right here in the southeastern region, uh, I haven't seen many jobs being advertised on artificial intelligence.
I'm going to say this, and I'm no expert, but I'm seeing it encroach in every aspect of life now. So I think because we're global with everything, like, I'll say it this way. I volunteer for my church. I volunteer online for my church. And so I'm communicating with people in all different areas of the world because we're so global, right? So I'm texting and chatting and video chatting with people all over the world, all, that sort of thing. So I'm saying that to say, when you're looking for job opportunities, always understand that you don't have to be physically in the same region where that technology is taking place if you have a grasp on how to get connected to people outside of your
Yep.
physical locale, right? Right? Because there's ways to network with people and join societies and organizations that will help you meet people outside of your region. And it's much easier to do that now than it was in the past. In the past, you had to, like, get a plane ticket, get to the airport, get a hotel room, and all that expense. And now all you need is, a Zoom account, you
Wow.
know,
Right.
and you
Yeah.
can network with people. So I would say I would recommend connecting online with people in those different types of organizations.
Different
There are all
tech
types of
groups.
societies and yeah, exactly.
Those tech groups.
There are a
Right.
lot of tech conferences, and most of the tech conferences are online streaming virtually. And so I would do that to network. And then once you watch someone giving a presentation on something that you're interested in, or something that you think you could collaborate with them, write it down and jot them in line. But always remember that when you reach out to somebody that you think is going to be able to lend you a helping hand, keep in mind that you have to have something in your back pocket that's also going to help them, because they never want to feel like you're just trying to use them. So even if you don't have, much, think of a way that you could possibly introduce them into your circle, or say, I'll write an article about you in my college newsletter, or, something, give them something in return just to show that you value their experience and you value their advice, and that there's a reason that you want to stay connected with them. A lot of people, even though they're in technology, they still have a sense of community. They still want a sense of community. And so when you can bring them into your community, I think that that would help them as well. So as far as AI is concerned, because I'm doing, I'm an independent author now. And one of the things that we're grappling with is, not only are they using AI for people, kids in school to, to take tests and write reports and all that sort of thing, they're now publishing books, even fiction books, with AI.
Wow.
And
I didn't
yeah,
realize that.
yeah. And so the struggle now with a lot of authors is it going to sound like a human voice when you read the story? And also, there are a lot of bloggers and influencers out there that really resent this, and they don't want to have anything to do with, and they won't promote books that authors are using AI to produce
Well,
because
see,
they
you
feel
know
like,
what? You know what? The biggest fear with AI, us humans are more concerned with losing jobs, okay, losing our efficiency. However, I don't think that AI is going to replace humans because yes, we AI brings the automation, it brings out the the less downtime, but it doesn't replace our intelligence, human intelligence,
right,
brain power, the creativity. Those robots
right,
are not creative at all. They just simply do one, two, three. But guess what? Guess what humans can do? We can produce new ideas. We can go back and revise those ideas. Those robots can't.
right.
See?
Yeah. And what I'll add to that is, when we started shutting down and staying home during the pandemic, when the
Yeah.
pandemic really started shutting things down and closing schools, and everybody was supposed to, pretty much shelter in place until they sorted out what was happening with masks and all of that. The thing that people turned to that got everyone through that the shutdowns was the arts. People were learning how to cook, people were learning how to paint, people were taking up hobbies, they were listening to music, they were reading books, they were listening to audiobooks. That's what kept everybody motivated and alive and connected, and feeling like they were still part of the world at large and not just isolated human beings sitting in an apartment somewhere.
Right.
So what kept, so people were learning how to bake bread, just any kind of hobbies. It was always someone reaching into the arts. And a lot of the singers and songwriters were out there doing virtual concerts just to keep everyone's spirits up. And so I think that's what you're talking about, is really like the human creativity, the human spirit. There's
There we
no
go.
that can recreate that,
No.
right? So if they use it as a tool, and I think one of the things that I can speak to is someone that's been through, in this for, well, I'm not in it anymore, but seen so much happen, is that was a concern when I talked about those gentlemen and their mainframe computers and having to go and ask for a report because there was one group of people locked inside of a big, huge room that had all the computers. Their idea was, the initial idea was, we want all of this computing power sitting on your desk. So you can run your own reports, you can get your own for information, you can create whatever you want, whenever you need it, it'll be right at your fingertips. Where are we now? Everything's in the cloud. We're trying to put everything off the desktop and put everything in the cloud. Everything is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point that you basically don't even need a laptop anymore, because you do
Another thing I
everything
want to
in.
add to that is that with artificial intelligence, the biggest fear that I have is that it'll be misused. Okay, just like
Yes.
other facets of technology, misusing AI for harm. What if some of these robots become out of control, and and we can't debug them because testing and debugging is a big issue even right now. There are a
And
lot of glitches.
that's for sure. I think that one of the things that if no one has noticed anything else, cybersecurity has always been an issue, but it's even more of an issue now because we're putting everything in the cloud and anyone can get access to it. Um, even access to the networks that you're connected to with your phone or your tablet or whatever, and then have access to what's in your pocket, right? So security is always going to be an issue. The other thing is,
Always
so
an issue? You think it'd be security will always be an issue? You don't think it would ever be, I guess, top notch?
security is always going to be an issue. Security is always going to be an issue. And the reason for that is, while you're getting certified in something, this is one of the things that when I was the last gig that I was, when I was working for Apple, what you were getting certified on, they already had the next iteration in beta. So you're never in step with what's happening right now, because things move so quick. So
So,
while you see what I'm saying? So while you're getting certified and learning something, while you think you're mastering a task or mastering a new system or mastering a new technology, they already have the next version of that sitting in beta. And the people that are out there testing it in beta are not necessarily, they could possibly be people who want to do harm. So that, the sharing of code and the sharing of opening up systems so other people can, the idea was, the more people that can bring in all their creativity, the more they can enhance these systems and these tools. But at the same time, when you open things up, you also invite in people who want to pirate and do bad things. So I don't think that you're ever going to be at a place where security is top notch. I don't think you're ever going to get there. I think what security has to do is constantly run at the pace that technology, the advancement of technology is, and that's going to, so it's like running in tandem. You have two systems running. You have the ones that are pushing the envelope on things, because one of the things that was a term when Cook took over for
Sam Cook?
no, Tim Cook. I thought you said Sam Cook.
Oh,
Sam
no.
Cook is, I thought we were going.
No. You thought we were talking about the blues, huh?
Yeah, right. I thought we were going sitting on the dock of the bay or something. But yeah, when he took over, one of the first things that I heard out of his mouth was how he was going to start to pivot the focus towards health and fitness and monitoring people's
Yeah,
their
right.
health, and then tying that in and having to deal with the HIPAA laws and all the other things that did the security around that. And so once they could break the code or crack the code on dealing with the HIPAA laws, and have a way for people's encrypted information to be passed between them and their hospital and their doctor, um, that was the shift. And so it became very personal. The things that you're wearing on your wrist or around your neck is monitoring your body's systems, the functions of your, you can't get any more personal than that, right?
Right.
I mean, that's how close that is to you. So there's ways to use the technology, but at the same time, that is that's something that everyone's going to be concerned about. What are you doing with my information? Where's my information going? A friend of mine went to Dubai for vacation. When he came through one of the airports, they just said, have a great day. Did you have a wonderful time in our country? He didn't have to show any identification. Every
No. Whoa.
facial
How did
recognition,
that work? Traveling outside of the country.
everything was facial recognition. Everything. He never had to pull his wallet out when he walked in and out of customs or whatever, the airport, the security, none of that. So those are the types of things that are happening right now today.
Wow.
And so so when you think about where the technology is going, think of all the opportunities for someone to exploit that. And
You know what? One of the biggest security flaws that you mentioned earlier, we have to protect passwords and also user credentials, right?
yes,
We cannot make those passwords just publicly available in the cloud, right? So just how people say back 20 years ago would write those passwords down on a sheet of paper and just leave them on top of their desk. That's a huge no-no.
no,
We have to make sure we don't do that with the cloud, because it'll be easily accessible. It'll be easy to
exactly.
crack. I will also say too, making confidentiality, just making sure that those files are only intended for its authorized users. Make sure nobody from the outside can access. Because even though I know you have a lot of, say, like, so let's say for example, like the latest iPhone update. Every time a new update is released, the next update goes into beta. Regardless if it's released, 3 years from now, the next update has new security breaches inside of it, right? So a lot of different downloads that have not yet been either viewed or tested. They probably won't get tested until time of their release. And that's why it goes through the whole patching process each time, right?
Yeah.
That's why Patch Tuesday is not long enough. You have to go through patching through and
Yes.
through, years before it's released.
Yes. And the other thing that happens with something like that, anytime you have um a device that has the ability to let you load more into it. So when you start adding TikTok and WhatsApp and all the other things to it, then you open yourself up through those other apps as well. And so
Mhm.
there's always space in whatever you're doing in this field. There's always space. You have to have the end user in mind and understand all the things that they're going to do wrong. And
Mhm.
I think that's one of the challenges is
It is.
when you sit there and you understand what's happening on the technology side of things, but you have to sit and think about the person that's actually going to use it and what their frame of mind is. And a lot of times, like you were saying, they don't want to deal with passwords. They want to just save their passwords. And the problem with
Yes.
that is anybody picking up your device is going to have access to all your stuff because you stay
Mhm.
safe, you stay signed in on all of your apps, and you keep all your information, and so it's all sitting there, right? But you always have to have the end user in mind, and the end user will fail you every time, and then blame you that you didn't include something to prevent that from happening because it's
Right.
never going to be their fault.
Right.
It's
So,
never.
just speaking on how, you were actually managing a big time DoD civilian contract that was worth
Yeah,
$4.1 million. Tell me,
yeah.
what were some of the challenges that men and women faced during that time versus what are some of the challenges that they face today?
I think the biggest challenge was getting in the door. And
Yeah.
that contract started out very, very small, just a couple of people. And the way the governments, and they still do this, they will set aside so much for small minority owned, women owned businesses. Like they'll designate, we need to um, have a certain amount of our contracts, dollar signs, for you know, women owned companies or black owned companies or whatever. And so the getting in the door was the first challenge. And then once we got in the door, then of course nobody wanted us there. They already had their
So you know what? After you got your foot in the door, what was one thing that happened that revealed that to you that they didn't want you there?
Oh, it was pretty plain. Like we're on a technology contract. We're responsible for end user training and technical support. So the systems that were there, or new systems that were coming in, or just basic desktop computers that were coming in and being put on the desk of all of these people. They'd never seen one before, didn't know what to do with it. And we were responsible for making sure everything was humming along and everybody knew what to do and all that sort of thing. So you would think that we should probably, in that help center, we should probably have a computer of our own, right? Nah,
Right, I think so.
right? So we finally got one computer for our team, even though there were five of us on staff there, and no chair.
No chair.
So, and no chair. So when you
Oh,
walk in and you're
okay.
like, okay, so this is the
Mm,
game that we're gonna play. This is the
yeah.
game we're gonna play.
Uh-huh.
Okay, okay. So um so that was, so that made it, real easy just walking in the door to see like, okay, so I have to fight to get a computer even though we're doing desktop support. and I have to fight to get a chair to be able to sit at this computer.
And be
Like I
comfortable.
have to fight for these little things,
Yeah.
right? I'm not asking for much. I'm just asking for a
Right.
place for my team to sit. And all five of us had to share. So that's just walking
Yeah.
in the door, just walking in the door. That's what we had to deal with.
Walking in the door.
The other thing was the contractor that was in place there was not minority, obviously. They had been entrenched in that environment for years and years and years. And so they all knew each other. The client knew them. They all been hanging around for 5, 10 years with this big name company. And here comes this small little black firm walking in the door with, 5 little people. And of course, we didn't pass the sniff test. Like, we don't know you. We don't know what you guys, we're in bed with these guys. We're, like, all their kids look alike as far as I was concerned. It was just like,
That's saying that
here
saying
we
being in
come,
bed with them
right?
is just funny to me. When I hit it on the job, I'm like, yeah, you want to be a part of them. But yeah,
You
I
know what I
mean,
mean? So
yeah,
it's
I
that's
do.
that's
I do.
coming in the door. That's coming in the door. That's what we were dealing with. And because I was raised in the Midwest with, with good parents, I was able to stand in the middle of that stuff. But I had the attitude that if that's going to be the case, then not only do I want to be here, but I want to outlast all of them, and I want to take all their business away from them. If they're going to
Wow.
do that to us, I want our contract to grow so big that there's not going to be room for those guys that are trying to put us down. And that's what we
Yeah.
did over 10
And you know what?
years.
That's one thing we've been discussing a lot of our workshops, overcoming diversity. So
Yeah.
because I let them know that those type of things are going to happen. It's just
Yes.
no way around it. I mean, I've already experienced things like that in my career. And I've been in this field for 13 years. But how did you navigate through some of those adversities to grow that contract, to the scale that you did?
I think the main thing was, I'll say this and then I'll say that. Because someone brought this up to me, a young person brought this up to me the past several times this month about how they're the first one in their family to do this. They're the
Mhm.
first one to go to college, et cetera, and they didn't have anyone to help them navigate what they were doing. And I said, even though my father never set foot in an office, he never worked on a computer, he never saw a politician or a general or any of that stuff. He didn't know anything about the Pentagon. He knew none of that stuff. He lived in Cleveland. But my dad gave me the best advice I ever had from anybody, hands down. And he said, at the end of the day, he said, Barbie, take care of your people, because at the
Yes,
end of the day, that's all that matters.
yes.
And
And
so what I learned to do was I learned to understand every task that I had on my team. So if my admin or my assistant manager or one of my trainers or one of my tech guys, no matter what they were doing, I understood their job. And so I could fight for them if they needed something, because I understood that they really needed it. And the flip side of that is they couldn't BS me because I knew their job. So they trusted me and I trusted them. So
you know
that's the
what?
main thing. You have to have a cohesive team to work
Agree.
with, and
Uh-huh.
they will fight for you. I'm telling you, my team would have run through a wall for me because they knew I had their back. So that's the main thing. You have to have a
I
very
love that.
cohesive
I love that.
team that you're working with, and you guys know that you're a team. Like, I
Mhm.
got you, and we were in this together. Um, so that was part of it, and the other side of it was, whenever I sat in a meeting with our client, I always sat on the same side of the table with them because I wanted them to understand we are facing the same challenge together. It's not you have a problem and I'm over here trying to figure out your problem. No, we have this problem together. Or we're facing this task together, or we're facing the challenge together. And so, how are we going to make this work? And it got to
That's
the
very
point
important.
that whenever they would say that they had to cut something or they didn't have the money to do something or whatever, then my major would turn and look at me. He was the contract officer representative, meaning he was the one who had the oversight over my individual contract, and as the liaison for the military. And so
See,
whenever they would start talking about this stuff, he would look at me and then he turned to the guys on his side and say, we can't do that to Barb. She'll have to go back and talk to Les. And then we don't want her to have to go back over there and do that, because he found me as one of them. I was just, when I walked in, it was just like I had a uniform on. So the idea that I was a outsider got lost on them because I had gotten so entrenched with their success, because their success was my success. As long as they understood that and I understood that, we were
That
free.
is, I think that's great because that's same kind of atmosphere I got to build right here in our Right Now networks. Very cohesive, togetherness, film oriented environment. Because I've seen many different supervisors I've had throughout my career. Once they reach leadership, they separate themselves from the rest of the
Yeah,
employees. They never been there. They act like
yeah,
they never been through entry level help desk, network engineer. None of that. They don't know how any of those office politics, career adversity.
right.
They act like they never experienced that before, and they tend to micromanage their employees, which creates a very toxic environment. So
Yeah,
I think that's a plus. And also too helping them through rigorous tasks because I'm gonna tell you, you read some new issues daily. Like I look at what I was doing today, add a new firewall rules. That's not easy starting out. You have to really go through the process.
yes,
So I think that's great. Um, Also too, working remotely. Like I said, remote work has really grown since
yes.
2018. Right before the shutdown, when we were forced to stay at home in 2020. Outside of COVID, what's like one thing do you think really caused remote work to grow?
I think the fact that the technology has pushed us to become a global community. Social media had a big part of that. When Twitter started, I think it was 2008, 2008, because I jumped on when before Twitter turned into this dumpster fire that it is now. Um, but it showed how you could actually communicate and share information and share resources and share causes and challenges with people all over the world, and
Mhm.
it brought a lot of walls down. So as social media rose, and what became what we back then we called citizen journalists, meaning anybody that had a phone could actually record what was happening and share it with the world. We didn't have to wait for the network news to
Right.
tell us. So you feel a sense of community with people that you will never physically meet. And you can watch their lives together. We can share. There are people that I'm
Yes.
very close to. I've watched their children grow up and graduate high school. I've never met them in person, eyeball to eyeball, but I know all the intricacies of their lives.
Right.
And every time there's a milestone, I celebrate.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I
You've
mean?
been a
So
part of that. You raised them too.
exactly. I'm one of the aunties, right? And so I think that that's part of why things began to open up, and also because businesses began to understand they couldn't put all their workforce in the Philippines. They couldn't put all their workforce in Bangladesh and India, because they're all kind of call centers over there. But the American people in particular, and I found this a lot of times when I was working with Apple, and I was chatting. I worked in chat like the last year and a half to deal with overseas customers that were dealing with iCloud issues, but never mind all of that. Um, People, when I was talking with them on the phone or chatting with them, they wanted to know, are you in the United States? Am I talking to someone in the United States? So there were people in America, in the United States, that they only want to deal with US people. They don't want to deal with someone with an accent. They just don't. And so what a lot of companies realized was it's cheaper for us to let our people work remotely than having to set up, so there was that
Different
backlash.
cubicles. You have to
Right,
set up
exactly,
cubicles,
exactly.
workstations, and get, like you said, allows you to grow your team a lot easier by reaching different regions across the world. Because I'm stationed in Alabama. Guess what? We have team members in Oklahoma City,
Right.
Maryland. I want to say Mechanicsburg. I think that might be in Virginia.
Pennsylvania,
Pennsylvania.
Mechanicsburg.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's Pennsylvania. But see, without without actually traveling there, you
yeah,
can just reach them, through Microsoft Teams and Zoom.
yeah.
Like and if they, it's team members like, I met a guy today. He's actually program manager. I talked to him on the phone several times the last couple of months. My first time I met him just today. I said, okay, so you're Brent.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Oh
I
my
said, okay,
gosh,
you Brent.
you're a real person. I've
Yeah.
been talking to you.
I
You've been
mean,
this big inside of my.
yeah, see,
Like,
in
oh
my
yeah,
mind, in my mind, I had this guy, that kind of look like the dude out X-Men, right? He got a beard and everything, but like he like a little kid, really. So,
right. How about that?
like,
It's amazing. It's amazing.
I said,
But
okay.
on your career path, though, see, these are the types of things to consider with where you work on the side of things that you work, because one of the things like I can speak on as far as Apple is concerned, they had that Mac on lockdown. Like they provided all the technology, everything that you needed, they shipped it to you and it was already set up. But to be able to monitor your remote workers, to be able to secure your corporate information, right? Because it's so you don't know who's walking through the room where your remote worker is working.
Mm-mm.
So you have to have a way to secure what's on that device, whatever they're using. You have to have a way to monitor the work that they're doing to make sure that they're actually working and not wasting your wages that you're paying them. So that's another thing to consider when you're looking at the type of work that you want to do. We're talking about security, but so that it touches so many things, and the more we decentralize corporate America, security becomes even a greater issue. You have people, I was doing some remote work, and people were giving me their credit card information. I'm
Whoa,
sitting in my bedroom,
whoa,
right? Because I'm taking an order for them, right?
whoa.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
So there's a
they
lot
really like you,
there.
don't they? They really like you to give that away.
But if they're placing an order, how many times do people call to place an order or to buy a new phone or to buy, you're calling and you're talking to a human being and you're giving them your credit card number so that they can place the order for you. That's
That's
happening every day.
that's true.
But that person is sitting in their bedroom at their kitchen table that's taking your credit card information, or signing into your account to be able to look things up, to be able to fix the situation. They're sitting they're sitting at their dining room table. So remote workers also mean more things that you have to make sure you have in place as a corporation to secure your corporate information and your customer or client information. So you have to have all of that stuff in place. And how do you vet these employees, potential employees, when they don't live anywhere near your human resources
Mhm.
office?
Now, you
So
know what? Another thing that we want to focus on too with remote work, but actually staying productive while working remotely, because you're at
exactly.
home, you still wearing your sweats, your pajamas. That that kind of, for some people, that brings some people energy level down.
Yeah.
Right. Uh, one
Lots of
tip.
distractions.
uh, one thing
And
I
so
like
you
to
have
share
you
about.
have a team of people who are
Yeah,
monitoring the calls, they're monitoring their acts, they're I
I
can
mean,
say
tickets are
from
being
Apple,
depleted.
there
Right.
are people that monitor your screens. They can pull up and monitor your screens. They can pull up and listen to you on the phones. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always someone that has to have eyes on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you have remote workers out there, you still have to have a way to be able to manage them,
Yeah.
and that is done through technology as well.
And see,
So
yeah.
there's a lot going on in the background. Even though everyone's working remotely, you still have to have the mindset of securing your corporation and all of its resources.
And see, one thing I like to add to that about working remotely, one tip that I tell everybody on my team, is that when you work remotely, always be engaging. So anytime you have any conversation with your peers, you're working on a ticket, or especially like doing team meetings, those Zoom meetings, have your camera on so
Yeah,
people can see you, because you want to call people that you haven't met yet, regardless how long you've been working there, and they don't know who you are, but you always stay muted or your videos off. They may think you just logged in, watch TV, just away from the computer.
yeah, and a lot of times they are.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. So
Yes,
you want to let people know who you are, that you're present. And even if they don't know you, they tend to forget about you. So you got those people with eyes on you saying, wait a minute, Rashard
yes,
Robinson, camera always off, he's always muted. So Even though,
They'll be the first one out the door.
yeah, I
They'll
mean,
be the first one that gets cut when it, yeah.
yeah, they like, wait a minute, so like, he never participates, but guess what? All your work is completed. Your immediate team members know you, but like I said, the rest of the team doesn't. See what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. I think that it's because work has become so casual, the casual environment, people don't get dressed up, they don't wear suits, everyone can just like put on a dress shirt and then have on their basketball shorts on, because they're zooming. So everything is kind of casual. So yeah, keeping a mindset that you are number one, you are the CEO of your life, you are representing yourself.
Mhm.
And you want to make sure that wherever you go, that you command respect. And we were talking about how when we got started, and then how we grew the contract. One of the things was making sure that I always walked in with the attitude that I'm here to get the work done, period. There were people that would come into the office. They had to have their coffee first. They had to have a cigarette first. They had to, do this and that and the other and go put their makeup on first. And all these things had to happen before they could sit down and actually get to work. And when they saw that I got in there ahead of time and I was already sitting down working at that on the dot, so work ethic goes a long, long way. And unfortunately, people can be very slack. The more relaxed the environment, they can be very slack about their work ethic. And that is extremely noticeable. And you'll be the first one to go. You'll be the first one out the door. When they have to make the tough choices,
Mhm.
yeah, you'll be the
It's,
first
it,
one done.
it's knowing the person who they interacted with the least, who they don't know, and they're like, wow, they haven't
Yeah.
done anything when they actually have, you know. Another thing, professionalism. One thing that I'm really stressing a lot in my team too is professionalism, being confident in themselves and their skill sets, and also pitching themselves to show, that they're highly valuable, highly knowledgeable, which is just simply just being themselves. So they don't think about it so much with create stress and nervousness. So I want them to be their authentic self in the workplace without disguising it by not speaking how they normally would, using a lot of country talk in a way. So tell me, what are some examples of how you portrayed your authentic self in the workplace? You know,
My authentic self.
yeah,
I think for
actually stating like type of music you like Rihanna just performed at the Super Bowl.
yes.
Some people in the office I know is back when I first started did not want to let their boss know that they listen to Rihanna, let's say Bruno Mars, or even like T.I. or Young Jeezy. But I did because I'm like, hey, I like that. That does explain who I am. That's just what I like, you know. But
Right.
I just want to ask, like, how do you portray your authentic self?
Okay, well, first shout out to Riri because I got on her Fenty
Oh,
lipstick right now.
oh, that's lit.
All right, all right, real master lippy, yes. So right on for that. As far as um, being authentic in the workplace, I'm gonna say it this way. I'm gonna frame it this way, and this is an unpopular opinion possibly, but um I was myself in the environment because number one, I already stood out. I was the only Black and I was the only female.
Mm,
So I was already not like the others.
yeah.
Like the Sesame Street song. I already was. So I didn't have to separate myself from the culture because literally my being there
Yeah.
separated,
Yeah.
right? So if I'm
Mhm.
in a room with all white men in gray suits or in green uniforms, and I walk in, regardless of the fact that I'm in a designer suit, I'm still not going to be part of their team, right? Um, so what I had to do was match them, number one, in energy, and you're talking about that in as far as their, being professional. So I had to match them in energy, right? If it was a crucial thing, an urgent thing for them, it was a crucial, urgent thing for me. I wasn't there as a spectator of their problem. You know what I mean? So I aligned myself with them in that respect, that I matched their energy in whatever the task or the situation was. Um, but as far as my interests were concerned, I didn't get too personal in the workplace. However, there were times when, yeah, there were times when I picked up certain knowledge about certain types of hobbies so that I could network and interact with them. One thing was golf. The other one was learning about cigars of all things.
Yeah,
So
that seems to be the going thing in the break room. Everybody talking about cigars, aren't they?
well, that was back in the day when cigar bars had just piano bars and cigar bars had become a thing, and so happy hour was migrating over from just sitting around, not standing around in lounges or whatever and having happy hour, or restaurants happy hour. They were now having these cigar bars, and so I learned all about cigar aficionado.
What time period was that? Probably about the late 80s or early 90s.
The early 90s.
Okay, okay.
The early 90s.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
thinking.
so, yeah, and so, going into the local cigar store and going into the humidor and being able to pick out the most expensive cigars and understanding where they're grown and how they're made and what type of wrapper and all that kind of stuff. To have that knowledge, to be able to speak their language, was important because I wasn't one of them, but that gave me entree into conversations that they didn't think they would be able to have with me. So I knew about baseball, I knew about cigars, I knew about golf. Like, I would pick up on things that interested them
Yeah.
and learn enough about it to be able to be in a conversation with them, even though it wasn't part of necessarily my culture. Right, because you never want to be standing in a situation on a social level, because you're not always just talking about work. So
No,
you're
no.
situations,
You don't want
where
to.
they're going to be talking about things. So I understood, like, I knew country music singers. Like, I wasn't into like the heavy metal stuff, but a lot of them were, into country music. So I knew the country music singers and I knew their songs that played on the radio. So that I would know. So know enough about you can be, um, uh, what is it? There's a saying, like, a master and a jack of all trades, but
Okay,
a
yeah.
master of
I,
none.
I was gonna say being relatable, but yeah.
Right. So you're just picking up enough information here and there so that when you're in a social setting, you're not standing off to yourself waiting for somebody to ask you about what's the latest
Right,
rap song.
right.
You know what I mean? So
You know what? I've always used sports as a pitch. I know that most
there,
people, here where I'm from, enjoy college football. So I
right.
started with the Alabama Auburn rivalry.
Exactly.
I pitched that way. And golf is another
Exactly.
thing I picked up over the years. I started playing with my uncle. He taught me, and I actually kind of fell in love with the sport. Oh, and also fishing. A lot of people
And
like to fish
fishing.
too. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Love
So
it.
so in the environment where you're working, you have your antenna up in the corporate culture where you are working. Is going to be different for everybody because everyone's in a different region doing different things. So pick up on what's interesting, especially if it's where you're trying to go. This is how you're going to help yourself get to where you're trying to go. So if you're trying to get noticed by leadership, management, whomever, another team, maybe you want to work on a different contract, maybe you want to get access to other kind of training or whatever. Whoever the people are that's involved with that, pick up on the culture of that,
Yeah.
and find things that will help you connect with them at some level. And it may not be something, when you go home, you may never listen to Toby Keith ever again. Like, you may never listen to any of these Loretta Lynn or these old, the old timeys, or
I
any
know,
of the
right?
what is that?
Yeah.
Florida Georgia line or whatever they are.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm
Uh,
saying? Like, you may
Elton
never listen
John.
to,
You won't listen to Elton John ever again.
right. But you know enough to be able to for them to go like, oh, hey, you listen to them too, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just to give yourself an open opportunity for them to see you as a person, not just background noise in the room. You know what I mean? Like you want something that's going to help you connect with them on a personal level. So that's what I would say about that. So as far as I was from Ohio, they were not. Um, a lot of them had accents because they were from certain region of the country. I didn't sound like them. And one of my coworkers, I said, "Man, my accent." She said, "You don't have no accent. You talk like folks supposed to talk." And I said,
Really?
"Wow." And I said, "I think I sound like Tom Brokaw or like Brian Williams. Like I feel I sound like one of these news reporters and stuff." She said, "Well, that's how the middle of America sounds." And it took me a while I was out there. Eventually, I kind of picked up on that mid-Atlantic, wet East Coast kind of kick-ass voice. So I,
Mhm.
I eventually got that the longer I stayed out there. But initially, I didn't sound like them. I didn't look like them. There was no way I was just going to, migrate into the place without being noticed. So that was easy for me. Of course, my hair wasn't in locks back
I was
then.
gonna ask you about that. When did you start your locks?
I started back in 2017 when I said I'm getting out and I ain't going back.
And you know what? I had locks once upon a time when I was in college, between about 2006, 2009. But I
Okay.
noticed, actually, I cut my locks before I got into IT. Fear about getting hired and being stereotyped, right?
Yeah,
After I cut them, guess what? I saw many more people get into the field with long locks. They started
right,
getting some good jobs. So I saw that
right.
was
It's changing.
it changed. It started being more
Yeah,
accepted. So that goes back to being more of your authentic self, just
yes,
embracing your likes, your hobbies, and just letting that shine through and through. Not really
exactly.
hiding who you really are.
Not hiding who you are.
Not fearing that people will stereotype you or degrade, your professionalism or knowledge.
I'm going to say this as because I'm doing, I'm writing now, and Toni Morrison was everyone knows Toni Morrison, the author, right?
Right,
Her
right.
one of the things she kept bumping into when people would critique her work or interview her as an author was, when are you going to start writing more white characters into your stories? And she kept saying and her response was always, and this is what I loved about her more than her works, was she said, I write about, black people and black stories, and the characters are black and so forth. The world is not centered on what she called the white gaze. It didn't have to be focused on the white gaze. She wasn't interested in what white people thought of the characters in her stories. She said, I stood in the middle of the road and said, this is what this is. And I dared them to come and find me. And I love that about her because she was just basically saying, this is my story. This is my work. Now you come and get it. Come and read it, come and understand it. But she wasn't moving off of her square. That was going to be it for her.
I
And I think that's the same way with anybody when you're talking
applaud that. I
about author.
applaud that as well. I do.
Yeah, and I ran into it with writing a cozy mystery because cozy mysteries are. Now I'm not trying to change the subject, but just on this point, um, cozy mysteries came. A cozy mystery is a mystery, some type of crime, but you can't see the blood, you can't see the gore. There's no explicit language or sex or any of that kind of stuff. And what happened was the romance genre started getting a little too steamy for some people. And so they started moving over into the mystery genre, but they wanted to keep it clean. Well, when I started writing and some other people of color started writing in the cozy, they started saying, well, that's not really a cozy. And they said, well, yeah, it is. But just because it's in an urban setting, it's not somebody walking a dog or baking cupcakes or something like that. You know what I mean? Like they started to say that it's not. We want to define this genre of writing based on our culture, not based on the rules of the genre. And we're like, no, we're still writing to the rules of the genre, but it's embracing our culture.
Hmm.
So we had to stand there and say, we're writing these stories and our readers will find us, but we're not going to shift the focus of our writing just for the white gaze, as Toni Morrison would call it. And I think that there's more writers with that backbone, but you can also see writers out there. You can tell from the tone of the story that they're writing Black stories for white people.
Hmm.
So there's still that out there. There was a young woman who she writes children's books, and she was talking about how she can read even picture books that are written about the Black experience, but you can tell it's written by a white person. It's different when you're standing in the experience and you talk about it versus someone who's speaking from an observation point. So I think that when you show up as yourself, no matter what kind of, whether it's technology or whatever it is you're
Yes,
doing,
I agree.
understand that you can stand in yourself and expect people to come and meet you where you are.
Get you where
You
you
don't
are.
have to constantly jump over the hoops and the
Yes.
hurdles to make
Mm-hmm.
yourself into what they find acceptable. As long as you're doing the job and you're being productive, you're
Amen.
being respectful,
Amen.
you have the receipts that say I deserve to be here. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's someplace that we're still evolving into
We
as you
are.
know, within the
We
United
are.
States, because
We made a
race.
lot of. I think we made a lot of progress since the early 2000s. Since about 2008, here in the year 2023, we really began as African Americans. We embraced our culture and accepted who we really are, and allowed people to meet us where we are. And guess
Yeah.
what? They started to respect us more as who we really are, kings and queens. You know.
And I think a lot of that is because the advancement of information. There's so much information that had not been shared across cultures that, we're starting to pull, the cheats off of things and saying, like the Tulsa massacre, the different things, that the inventions that were created by Black people, that a lot of the the Black history, African American history within the United States, a lot of people had no understanding of it. And also the interactions within social media. You have so many people that have crossed over into embracing more and more of our fashion, our style, our, the way we, the slang that we use and our language. Like African American culture impacts the entire world. Everyone's out there copying how we walk, how we talk, how we wear our hair, how we dress, how we, whatever, the music, it touches the whole world. And I think that has elevated us, but there's always going to be, because within the United States, the African American was birthed out of white supremacy, because that's how we got here to begin with. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's always going to be the remnant of that, that we're going to have to deal with, because it's just like we're just 3 generations away from them owning all the land on all the Black folks. So it ain't been that long ago. So we're still dealing with, that
Mm-hmm.
the pervasive attitude of we need to be put in our places, but our place is here. So
And I'm wondering, Toni Morrison might inspire you to become an author,
no, actually, when I was a kid,
huh?
I wanted to write, and I actually did a little bit. Um, And the funny thing is, the older I got, the more I realized it was from my dad. My dad used to write letters and poetry to my mom, but you would never know that because he was this big, strong, silent type Black man from Louisiana. He was, the guy
Yeah.
and the man's man. And he was GQ before GQ was GQ. Like
Mm.
he was the guy.
Wow.
And but you would never know that he had
True.
that side of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a child, I had a library book that apparently we kept too long. And we walked up to the store. My dad held my hand and walked me up to the library. We were going to return this book. I don't know what that white woman said to him, but I know that when we left there, he had paid for the book and I owned it. It was like whatever she said set his nerves off, and he
Ooh.
just paid for the book and bought the book. And I remember coming home thinking, I didn't know you could own a library book. I thought library books
You gotta
only
have
existed
to
in the
turn them
library.
in. Go ahead,
Like
I'll
I
turn them
thought,
in, right?
Right. I just thought, wow, what, I own this? Like, I thought this belonged to the world, like this belonged to the library, like this belonged to everybody, and now I get to keep it. So that just really settled it for me. Like, this was like such a precious gift, this book. So
Oh
it started
man.
early for me, and what happened during the pandemic, and so, well, actually before the pandemic, I started taking writing classes again. And so it was like something that I started young, and all the way, like, my mom used to drive me to the Creative Arts Center so that I could sit and learn to write. And I was the only one in there that was not a middle-aged white person. Right. And I was like 14 years old. And I'm sitting there like, what am I doing here? But my mom wanted to find the best play. And so she would drive 45 minutes after, and I would write the assignment and I would turn it in. And the instructor he was black. He was black. Um, but he was of that culture, right? And I didn't know what I was doing there. So I would write out the whatever the assignment was, and I turn it in, and I would get it back, and it had red ink all over it. He had scratched out everything. He had written all kind of comments on all kind of things that was wrong. And that happened like two or three more times. And I was so disheartened by that. And I told my mom, I can't do this anymore because I'm really bad at this. I'm really just like, I'm no good. This is terrible. This is terrible. I just feel stupid. And so we went up to the place, and my mom said, I'm taking her out of the class. And he found out and demanded that we have a meeting. And so there I am with this instructor who's an adult, and my mom, who's my mom, an adult. And I'm sitting there in this chair. And he said, I'm not criticizing you because you're bad. I'm criticizing you because your work is good. You must keep writing.
You didn't expect that, did you?
I didn't understand it at all.
You didn't expect that.
I thought that he hated it because he was always tearing the work apart. But that was something that I never lost sight of that. So eventually, again, later on in life, I picked it up, started taking some classes, bought a bunch of books, all that kind of stuff. And then life continued on. And then, in 2020, 2019, 2020, like, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it?
Uh-huh.
And then I settled down and just did it. But yeah,
Yeah.
there are Black authors, and particularly like Toni Morrison, that you want to get their voice in your ear to help you over certain
Right.
hurdles and situations. So yeah.
Yeah, you have to take time to follow your dreams. I know we get
Yes.
busy with pursuing our own career goals, achieving new IT certifications, and either getting a new job or maintaining that job. But I decided that with my business as well. Never to lose sight of that, what I really set out to do, because I wrote these goals down. When I was in college and grad school as well, from becoming a Cisco instructor at the college level. I've done that now. um, let's see, I traveled for different work assignments as a network engineer with state government, federal government, done that. So now I got around to my own IT consulting company. I said, I've been working on this on the side for the last almost 5 to 7 years ago, right? It's time I go ahead and push this finally. You never know till you do
Yeah.
it.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
not gonna hurt you, it's not gonna take away from you. You might as well do
Right.
what makes you happy.
And think about your legacy. And I think
Yeah,
that's one of the key things that well, I won't get into different opinions about it, but I know sometimes when you're getting started, you're not necessarily thinking about, like, those gentlemen that I started working with 35, 40, 45 years ahead. Because
right.
I was thinking, my God, they're thinking what's going to happen 35 years from now. I'm not even 35 years old. Like, I don't even understand what they're getting. Like, how do you plan that far in advance? I was just thinking,
It's
when I
hard
get
to see
my
that
check,
far.
right, I got to pay my apartment rent. I got to, like, I'm just thinking about just getting to the, month to month to month. And they're
Hmm.
planning generations ahead, but that's how they think. And one of the things that I would say, even for young people that aren't necessarily very technical, you can begin to create a legacy, something that your descendants, your children, your grandchildren can build upon. Like, one of the things that, if you've ever watched the show, um, Finding Your Roots, um, what's his name? The genealogist, like Henry Lewis Clark, is that his name?
Yeah,
Um,
yes, sir.
okay. whenever you, because I did some genealogy work for my family, and one of the things that people don't realize is the documents and the photographs, and somebody somewhere took that photograph. Somebody somewhere
That's why I take a
documented
lot
that
of pictures.
situation,
Yep,
right?
that's why I do that too.
Exactly. And so when you are out in events situations, there are libraries that would love to have photographs of when you were a child and this was in style. There are fashion institutes that look at fashion over the years. So just
Right.
you documenting the things in your life, just taking photographs and uploading them into stock photo websites so you can get royalties every time somebody uses your picture. Those are royalties that will outlive your life. So the royalties will continue to come in every time someone needs a picture of uh, what is it called down in New Orleans, the second line or whatever,
Second line. That's right.
right?
Second line.
Right. So whenever someone takes a photograph of something and it documents someone's funeral, it documents an event, it documents some kind of special parade, some kind of special
Hmm.
anything,
Right.
or even the common everyday things of life where there used to be a factory here, there used to be a store here, there used to be a school here. There are people who need those documents and need those photographs.
You
And if
need
you
that.
create them and put them someplace where they can gain royalties, your children and your grandchildren can continue to receive the money from that. To set up your estate planning to do that. Same thing with
Which furthermore proves why, you know what, people need to hear your story and you need to be your authentic self. That further
yes,
proves that. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, don't hide who you are, where you been. Like I said, let your light shine from within. You know, show people what you done, what you experienced. You know, share those experiences. Same way they talk your ear off, talk theirs off.
right. And document that and put it someplace where it's going to gain revenue. You can actually sell your experience in a workbook, in an ebook, in a journal, put it up on Amazon, sell it, and those royalties will outlast you. I started quilting during the pandemic. The quilts that I make will outlive me. There are people who buy quilts on auction that are 20 years old that spend thousands of dollars for them. They will become an asset to your descendants. I think
Yes,
one of the things that
yes, that's what
that
I
I
love.
really want you guys to understand is start building your legacy where you are right now and start thinking about what you have in your hand today that you can start, even if it's making pennies now, they'll turn into dollars or
Yep,
turn into
you're
thousand
turning into
dollars and
dollars and
your
uh,
grandchildren will have something to
documentaries.
stand on.
You know,
Right.
documentaries, you know, just how you relate it to all the famous entertainers, famous athletes. They started the same way. Like I said, from the very bottom. They worked their way up, they practiced countless hours on the craft before anybody even took notice. Before you knew it, they became the stars and the legends that you know today.
Start with where you are. Start
Yeah.
with what you have
Hmm.
and start where you are and think about what you're going to leave, because you don't want, what we don't want as African Americans in this country, we don't want to always have the next generation starting from ground zero. We want to have something that they
Yes.
can stand on and say, okay, now I can take it further.
And, you know, that's another thing I said, you know, about, you know, I love what you point about quilting. You know, I started also another reason why I started my company because I want this company to outlive me, pass it down
Yes,
to my children and grandchildren one day. I
exactly.
want this, you know, with the workshop I'm building, I want this to grow to where, you know, I build my community and it grows with more people from the community. And guess what? It gets passed down to
Exactly.
more people who, you know, carry on the legacy, continue going,
Exactly.
you know.
And whatever you do, there's always room to network into others that can do for you. Like if for like I'm writing, so there are people who can do the graphic arts, there are to do the covers, there are people that can do the marketing for me. So there's whatever technology or anything that you're doing, there's always a resource out there that you can tap into and you can grow together. So when they have an opportunity, they can refer people to you and you can refer them to them. So uh, refer that person to them. So you also want to not just network, but you want to build relationships with people that are part of what you do, so that you can help each other move up. that no man is an island. No, there is no self-made anything.
Nope.
Everybody's you need someone else to help push you forward. And so, that's the other thing to think of, is how can you help someone else and find ways to collaborate together. So if there's tools that you need, if there's shirts that you need that have your company logo on it, if there's mouse pad, well, you don't use mouse pads anymore, but if there's skins
Well,
that
you'd be
you need,
surprised. Yeah, I had somebody ask me the other
yeah,
day about some floppy disks and zip drives.
right,
I won't call any names, but they
right,
listening right now. They know exactly what I'm talking
okay.
about.
Well, there are companies out there that still make those supplies, and you can especially if they're African
You know,
American, and you can contract with them and help build each other up.
yeah.
Because when someone has an opening for a job and they're expanding, they're going to think, hey, let me call Rashad. Maybe he knows somebody. You know what I'm saying? So you may be needing some extra people. You can hire them on a contract basis, or they can help out on one project, and then let them go. They can get the experience. So that idea of, it takes a village. I think that we need to make sure that that's included in the way we do business as well.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you. So as we're talking about creating a legacy, building a community of people, why do you think a lot of IT leads or supervisors feel threatened by their younger team members and they choose not to mentor them?
I think one of the things that I saw within the corporation is the amount of responsibility that rests on the shoulder. And not I don't know every situation, but I know from what I've seen, once that level of stress and responsibility sits on your shoulders, and you know that you're responsible for the paychecks of dozens of people,
Mhm.
and all of that, and making sure that you stay within the line so that you're not in trouble with the auditors, you're not in trouble with your client, all that stuff. So you've got all that's weighing on you. And then you get introduced to some technology or some processes or some systems that you're not an expert on. That can make anybody feel insecure, because now you have to put your trust in someone else to be able to not only know what they're doing, but make sure that the whole ship doesn't sink. And
So
that's a tough
you
place
think
to be.
so
And I
so
think that
you think a
right.
lot of those leads are afraid to, I guess, lean on some of their younger team members for advice?
I think that part of it is, if I don't know enough about the subject, how do I know if you really do? So first of all, that's part of it.
Hmm.
So you have to have someone there that has the credentials and the background to be able to stand up, as they say in the military, stand and deliver. That if you
Hmm.
be able to stand up and deliver the information, and I have my confidence that what's coming out of your mouth is going to be 100, then that's a different deal. So if I have a way to vet these people to make sure that I have the best sitting in front of me, then I can like, okay, I can sleep at night. But if I have people come, if I inherit a team from someone else and I don't have relationships with them, that's a whole nother dog to fight. You know what I'm saying? So that's that part of it as well. So you have the human interaction of, I don't know who these people are. I don't know if they have their own agendas. There are people who are sniping for my job. And so they may find a way to make me look bad so that they can get my
Hmm.
job. So there's a whole lot of politics that happen in a corporate environment that you have to deal with. So you have all of those things, just the human interaction and the insecurities of the emotions. And then there's the tactical situation of, I don't know what this is, and I don't know that you know, and I've got to put all of my trust in you to make sure that this ship doesn't sink. So there's a whole lot in there that has to be unpacked. I think the main thing is, show yourself. If you're on the side of the young person, show yourself that you definitely have the credentials and you have the background and the knowledge to do the thing. So come in there with receipts, and come correct, right?
Yeah,
So be respectful.
absolutely.
Understand there's an opportunity to speak, and sometimes there's an opportunity to just sit there and be quiet and watch them flounder. because if you have the answers, a door will open for you to be able to, to help. But I think part of it is understanding everyone's human. Everyone's dealing with insecurities. You don't know what's going on in somebody's life behind the doors when the lights go out at the office. So there's that part of it. So be respectful and understand everybody's got their own struggles. But a lot of what you already talked about is building that network of relationships and also presenting yourself in a way that you're being taken seriously. If you come in there slumped over, if you come in there, with morning breath, if you come in there, wearing the same thing you had on yesterday, if if you come in there, like, you know what I'm saying? Like if
Some
you
people
come,
have that all day, bro.
what is that? Who was that? Oh my gosh, who was that? Was it a football player? I'm trying to think of his name, but he was saying, I'm just here so I don't get fined. The guy who went
Marshawn Lynch. Yeah,
Marshall Lynch.
yeah, beast mode.
Man, I'm just here so I don't get fined. Like if you come in with that attitude,
And you know what?
you didn't know I knew about them.
His one response, yeah. He answered every question the same way, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
That's all he said, yeah.
If you're that guy,
yeah.
yeah. Even if your attitude, so if you come in with that attitude is I'm just here to get paid, I'm just here to collect my check. If
Yeah.
I'm just, so if it's hard for me to put my trust in you when I don't, if I'm not getting that energy back. If I'm not getting the energy back from you that you're just as vested in this situation as I am, you to ask me before how was I able to grow my contract from 300 some thousand to 4.1 million is because I was matching their energy, that I knew everything that was at stake for them was important to me, that them failing was not an option for me.
Right.
Them sitting at that table in front of the Congress, they could not look back. You know what I mean? Like we were in this thing
That wasn't
together.
going to happen.
Right, exactly. Not on my watch, man. Not on my watch. And so they knew that I had their back. And I think that if you align your energy that way, that people can pick up on that. If you're just there to pick, I'm just here, no, I don't get fined. Like they can pick up on that energy. But being your authentic self, sometimes you have to decide, when I'm here, I can be my authentic self 24 hours a day. But I also have to realize when I'm in this culture, I have to put on the uniform, right? So I don't play sports. But if you, they were talking about the Lakers and how playing and staying in the bubble. Remember during the pandemic and they were in the bubble? It's helped them to be concentrated as a team. And it also identified those who really were into basketball, like basketball was their life.
Right.
And those who were like, I'm just here so I don't get fined. So those, you could tell,
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
The attitude, the commitment wasn't there. There was the
ones who really, enjoyed the game of basketball versus
right. It was in their heart. This was their passion. It was either their vocation or their passion. And people can pick up on that in a work environment as well. So when you come into the job, even though you want to be your authentic self and you want to wear your locks, you want to wear your nose rings, you want to have your neck tattoos, I understand all of that. But when you're in that corporate environment, the person that's paying your check, paying them, giving you your check, the person whose name is on the door, you got to put on that uniform that day. And that's when your authentic self gets eclipsed by whatever the goal is for the team. So you may have to sit on the bench or you may have to be the one to take the ball. So it just depends on the situation. You have to understand that.
So you know what? I know that you have built a great camaraderie within your team. Have you ever experienced any type of conflict within the team? They may have felt like they didn't get ample opportunity to shine on the project, or the question didn't get answered. If so, how did you approach that?
I did. I had, I'll give you two examples. One was a young lady who felt like she wasn't being taken seriously. She was, I don't want to give all the background just in case this gets out there.
That's understandable.
Yeah, she had come in through a different not through a, like, I didn't hire her. She was like moved into my department. Um, and she was, she was teary-eyed. Like, she didn't feel like anybody was taking her. She was a beautiful, beautiful girl.
Mm,
And I think the fact that her beauty was all certain ones were able to see, and they didn't take her seriously intellectually,
mm.
right? And so, me
They were
being a
only
woman,
focused on her physical attractiveness, not
right?
her
And
intelligence.
that had been that had worked for her, right? And had gotten her indoors. But once you get in the door, if that's the only way they see you, they're not going to give you real work to do. They just kind of want you around for, eye candy.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so she kind of felt like,
Hmm.
this isn't, I'm not being taken seriously. And she didn't think I was taking her seriously either. And I was like, I don't even know you, honey. I don't even know you. I didn't hire you. I don't even know you. That's what I'm thinking. So it's not that I don't take you seriously. I just don't even know what you bring. I don't know anything about you, because the only thing I knew was she's this beautiful girl that was brought in, put into my department. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? You know what I'm saying? So that's where I was at. She was a blank slate to me. So I didn't want to give her anything to do because I didn't know what she could do. I knew nothing about her. It wasn't like I had gone through an interview process and been able to check a
I
reference
mean, I
or any
mean,
of
I
that.
mean, but like nobody gave like any type of background on them. They didn't actually say what the skill set
No,
was,
honey,
job title.
no. It was, here you go.
Mm,
So she was so she's in my department. And I thought, we'll give her um some light work to do. She obviously had enough of a relationship with the higher ups that she would pull a paycheck. And
mhm.
so she had to sit somewhere, and here she is. So, here's some stuff, so I'm like, here's some stuff for you to do, because I basically am babysitting this person, is what I'm thinking. She's here, I got to give her something to do. Um, and so she kept watching other people getting promoted and moved into jobs and blah, blah, blah. And she just felt like, no one's taking her seriously. And she had other people come to me on her behalf to say, I really want to do, I want to train, I want to do what you guys do. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. So eventually what I saw was someone who sincerely, it was the sincerity of her request. It wasn't that she came in and was pounding on the door and saying, I demand my rights. I'm going to apply and you're going to hire me into this position or anything like that. It was the sincerity in her, number one, she was very, very professional. She was extremely respectful.
Mhm.
She always worked well with everyone around us, no matter what role she was in. So she had a beautiful work ethic and a beautiful attitude. And I started to feel like this kid needs at least one opportunity.
One opportunity. That's all we all need,
Just
I
at
think.
least one.
That's
You
what
know,
most of us need.
exactly. And that happened more than once. And it was once like, okay, here, I want you to do this, but we're going to do it in a controlled environment where it's not going to blow up all over the client. I'm not going to get a whole bunch of complaints about it. We're going to set you up to do this one task outside of, we'll see how you do,
Hmm.
and in a controlled environment. And so that was that was one situation where, and it worked out beautifully. And I still see her on Instagram to this day. And that was
Wow.
back in the 90s. And they tracked me down on Facebook. There's been a couple of them that tracked me down. So I did have situations where people were like, give me a chance, give me a chance, give me a chance. And even though I didn't see their credentials, I saw their work ethic and their attitude and how well they worked with everybody around us. And I'm like,
Did
even
you?
if they don't know it, they will know it. Like, these are
Yeah.
the people that are not going to go to sleep until they master what they need to master. And
Right.
so that commitment was enough for me. There was enough fire in their
Did
belly.
you?
The
You
other
know what?
person was a
Oh.
gentleman who was an ex-Marine who basically lied on his resume.
Oh boy.
Said he knew everything. He knew all of this, that, and the other. And I told my boss, I'm gonna fire this guy. He's out. He's out of here.
Hmm.
I just, I don't have time. Like, I'm in the pressure cooker that I was working in. I
Uh-huh.
didn't have time to deal with that. I'm like, okay, he's out. And my boss was like, I know what this is. This is a black woman being a manager over a black man, and this is just not working. So let me step in and fix this. And so he's giving me this vibe of, I'll handle it, Barb. And I'm like, okay, fine. So we had a lunch. My boss came, he brought us, the both of us, to the table, and my boss is explaining to him, this is what we found out. And I just want to know, how long is it going to take you to get up to speed, to know the things that you said that you knew? And, we're not going to fire you. We're just going to give you a chance to make this right.
Improve, improve
Right.
the
Improve yourself. And the guy said, no, that's okay. I'm just going to go. And my boss was like,
he
no, I don't
decided
think
to
you
leave.
understand. I'm saying we're not going to fire you. I just want to see, how long is it going to take you? 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months? Give us an idea how long it's going to take you to get up to speed on this. He said, no, I'm just going to leave. And he
So I
said,
guess he couldn't handle it.
right. He's like, I don't get why I'm just making, so he's stammering over himself that he's told me, the woman, to stand aside, step aside, let me step in here and handle this situation for you. And now it's not being handled. And now you're saying I'm doing this gracious offer to you, even though you lied on your resume. And you're basically saying, I don't care, I'm out. Like, it just blew his mind. And so once that lunch meeting was over, and all while that conversation is going on, I'm just eating my lunch. Right? I'm just like, this is between y'all. I'm just gonna sit here and just
Wow.
be the little lady and just have my lunch. When it was over with and the guy left, he said, my boss looked at me, he said, I will never interfere with how you run your team ever again.
Did you
And he
by
never
chance try
did.
to create a job for anybody? Say for instance, like the young lady who felt like she wasn't
Yes,
being taken serious. Did you try to create a role for them?
I had created a role, when, as the contract, because people created jobs for me. Those old men that I started with back when I was straight out of school, and they created, even within the government system, they created opportunities for me. There was no way I'm going to sit here and not do the same for someone else, right? So as the
That's how I
team
feel about
grew,
it.
yeah, as the team grew, I was able to put people on site and people within our physical corporate location, and create positions and put people in.
Yes, I felt the same thing. As I had supervisors who, literally picked me out of the crowd, right, and
Yeah,
it fell with me. So I felt the need to, and I was actually given a chance to move up and pursue a bigger role. So that I had to do the same for somebody else. That's one reason why I do the things I do now.
yeah, absolutely.
Uh, oh, so some more question I have for you. What are the pros and cons of working as a government contractor versus a civilian employee? I've always wanted to get to the civilian side, but I found a lot of great benefits as like higher salary, actually obtaining government contracts for yourself on your business as a contractor versus civilian. Sometimes you kind of see your ceiling. Like you have more job security on the civilian side, but you may find your ceiling as far as like opportunity and pay on your side. So like what are the pros and cons there?
Okay. I apologize if my dog starts to. I have a dog, and he's decided to wake up and
Mhm,
complain.
mhm.
So I apologize if you hear him in the background. Um, I was a government employee for about 2 years, and I felt like I wasn't moving up fast enough. And I think for me, it just depends on, where you're located. Where I was, because it was Capitol Hill and there was a lot of money flowing, and it was also very expensive to live there.
Yes,
I
it
didn't want
is.
to, I didn't want to have to wait to make that money. So even with the intern programs that I was jumping 2 grades every year, I was jumping. Um, at the top tier of that internship, it would have taken me 3 years to get there.
Mm.
And I could have made that money straight out the gate as a contractor. So it didn't take me but a minute to say, okay, I'm out. Plus, I was also interacting with a lot of contractors because I was bringing them in on behalf of, my general and the different ones. And so they knew that, see, a lot of it had to do with who I knew and where I was.
All right.
So because I was working with them, these contractors saw me. Number one, I already had relationships within these agencies. I already had relationships with these, influencers within the government. So my coming in on their side, I was already an asset because since I already had built relationships with these clients,
Mm-hmm.
when I walked in the door representing another team, they were like, well, we don't know your company, but we know Barb. And that's one of the things that they said out loud to the president of a company that I worked for. I took a job with them, and he said, "We don't know you, but we know her, so we're going to trust you guys," because
Mm.
I had worked with them before. So they didn't know the two guys sitting at the corporate office with the fancy suits, but they knew me from working in their environment before. So they're like, "We're going to trust you because we trust her." So that was what, you know, that's where my decision, that's how it was easy for me to make that decision. So a lot of times it depends on where you are and what you do and the opportunity that's sitting in front of you. Sometimes it's more important to sit in that government job based on, you don't want the insecurity of dealing with, like, the government is going to, even though politics gets involved in it, the government's going to pay its bills. You're going to get the paycheck. If you're a contractor and you're on a contract and it comes up for renewal and it doesn't get renewed, then what? Right? Then who pays your salary? There's no contract to bill you against. So you have to always keep that in mind, that there's going to be a level of this, of insecurity depending on the type of work. Now, when I worked for KPMG, which is one of the big four finance and accounting firms, they just, for the first time, I think, U.S. history, they just cut some staff. This is the first time ever. But they had such deep pockets. I never had to worry about being paid. I mean, they're like Fort Knox, like they have money just flowing. The problem with that was you had all of these perks and all of these benefits, like crazy, outrageous benefits, but we called it the golden handcuffs because the job was so grueling. It was just such a meat grinder of a place to work, but they threw everything at you. Like, there was nothing you couldn't do. I remember there was a snowstorm, and I was standing in the middle, all the trains, planes, everything, the roads everything was shut down. You couldn't get out of town. And I stood at North Moore Street in Arlington, Virginia, and I called the travel service, KPMG, and I said, I'm stuck here and nothing is moving and I can't drive home. And she said, where are you? And I said, I'm at the corner of Northmore and whatever. And she said, 1 second. It's literally within 5 minutes. She came back on the line and she said, which direction are you facing? I said, I'm facing west. She said, turn to the right, walk 2 blocks. I have a room for you at the Marriott, Key Marriott. And that was the type of thing I could do at any time. Like, I could get, like, at the drop of a phone call. They paid for this room for me to stay because I'm stuck. And they had made sure that I had something to eat. They made sure that a car came and got me where I needed to go. Those are the kind of crazy benefits they had. But it was a meat grinder of a job that meant you had no life. You never saw your family. You never got to have any kind of life outside of the job. So your coworkers became your family. And it's like, are you willing to give all of that up? And I gave up my personal life for a while to be able to have that experience. But then it was just like, I gotta go. So
Wow. So you mean that government job was very demanding of a lot of your personal time too?
my government job was not. My government job was 9 to 5. It was a routine that I could count on. I would see the same people. We'd be doing the same job. It'd be the same hours. We'd all eat at the same restaurant across the street. If we didn't have it catered in, it was routine. When I jumped over on the contractor side, it was like the wild, wild west.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it too. Because you go on an adventure on the contractor side. You get every day is different.
Yes,
I think you might have more freedom on the contract side. That's what I know.
definitely more freedom. You have to be willing to take control.
There
Everyone's
we
not
go.
able to do that. And I can say that from my personal family. I have family members who, my grandfather worked at a certain company, parents worked at a certain company, the kids worked at, like everyone got they got you in the door and then you worked there and and you stayed there until you retired. And that was the routine that worked for them. And that's fine for them. But there are other people who we want to be out there, with space cowboys. Like we want to do the thing. So if that's your personality type and that works for you, then jump to it. I could never sit in a routine. Like I just could never. I just could never. Just could never.
For
So
the
it was
longest time, I thought that I wanted that routine, just for the permanent. But as I realized from a lot of my travel experience here recently, you know what? You better stay free because
yeah,
I've been able to expand so much through last couple months. Traveling to Alaska, Arizona,
yeah,
York,
nice.
and Canada. I said I wouldn't have done that being stuck in one spot. Just
Right.
probably that permanent role that I was seeking for so long.
Yeah.
So it allowed me to open up and just free my mind to endless possibilities. Say, you know what, just go,
Yes.
just get out there and do it and take control, like you said.
Yes.
Yeah,
And once you get out of your, 2 mile, 10 mile radius of where
yeah,
you've grown up
uh-huh.
and experience
That's what I
different
did.
types of, yeah,
Yeah, and I began to realize that it's a bright world out there.
yeah, yeah,
It's a bright world, and
yes,
continue exploring that.
yes. And that works for some people, and then other people that it's too much of a stress. It's too, it causes them anxiety, or they may have relationships that count that out. Like I can't be on the road because I have, relationships, family, parents that I have to care for, whatever the situation is. And they can't do it, so it just depends. There's pros and cons, but the pros and cons are based on your, what's between your ears. Like what is your mindset and what's your makeup? I'm wired differently
Yeah, me too.
than my sibling, so we didn't make the same choices, and that's perfect for her life.
Yeah, because I remember telling my dad, for instance, well, both my mom and my dad about my news about the traveling network engineer gig. They both asked me, "When do you leave?" That's the next thing they asked me. They're like, "Just go." I was okay.
Yeah,
Well, so by that point, I had my bags packed.
yeah,
My bags were packed after that. I was gone. I was going anyway, but after they told me that, it ain't take me long.
yeah,
you know.
exactly. Get
Mhm.
that experience.
Yeah, and they said, just go. All right. That's all they said. They said,
Yeah,
okay, just go.
I
So,
love it.
yeah. So, like, what's your best and worst job along your career experience? We're gonna wrap up in a few minutes. What's your best and worst job that I would say along the way?
Best and worst job. My worst job was my worst job was when I was still, was I straight out of high school, I think.
Hmm.
And I worked for J.C. Penney department store. I don't even know if they're still in business. I think
It's a
they're
few.
closing down. Are they still around?
It's a few. Like I said, we got one here in Montgomery, but they kind of, what they
They
kind of like
closing
to
them,
see
right?
is they kind of like,
Yeah, they're
they kind of
becoming
like
extinct.
the circus city of the world. You don't see too.
Yeah, they slowly disappearing. I worked in, what's worse is
But
I worked in the catalog department,
in the
which meant
catalog,
that they used to get giant catalogs of stuff, and you place an order for your stuff. Like you could
mhm.
mail it in, write a check and mail it, and then they would deliver it to your house, or you could come to the store and pick up your catalog order. And that's where I sat at the place where the people would come to pick up their catalog order. It was I can't even describe how boring that job was.
You know what?
That
I think,
job
I
so boring.
laugh at that. I laugh at that because I think about when I was a kid, my mom used to shop in that catalog so much. Buying stuff
Right.
for the house, putting stuff in my room, school
It's so
uniforms.
convenient.
Yeah,
That was before Amazon.
it
That
was.
was the
It was.
yeah,
That was the Amazon that I knew. That
right.
in the catalog. Oh,
Back in
Parisian.
the
Oh,
day.
Parisian had one too. See, some people might not know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
They just know about Bill, but I'm talking about Parisian. You
Okay.
know.
That was the worst. That was so boring. Because there were only two of us. There wasn't even anybody to talk to.
Oh
We were
yeah,
just like in a
that.
little isolated space right
Oh
near the
yeah.
door because that's where people could come and go. And there'd be one person in the back
Oh,
getting the stuff and me at the front
see,
taking the paperwork.
you
It
said
was so boring.
you said they kind
Oh,
of
and the best job for me was,
okay.
whew, man, it was the best job. The
You
best one for me
had a lot of great
was,
jobs, so it's hard to think,
I
huh?
had some good ones. I had some good
Hmm.
ones. The best one for me was I worked as a special assistant to the CIO of the General Services Administration. The
Wow.
GSA has different branches within it, and this branch within was called the Building Services. So they're the ones who own all the buildings of the U.S. Federal government. And they had a black man who came over from the State Department on to become the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. And I was working as a contractor with a different company. And every time he would come in, I made sure that it wasn't my job, but just because I saw this man in this position and I wanted to make sure he understood he was going to be respected. The company not necessarily was respecting him like that, but I was going to respect him like that. So whenever he came, I made sure that the conference room was set. I made sure that everything was set for him. I made sure that we had all the amenities set for him as far as food and water and notebooks, pens, pencils, whatever. Like he was going to be treated like a king when he came to our facility. I didn't care.
Okay.
It was not my job. It
What I'm
was not
talking
my
about.
job. But
Okay.
because he was a black man put in that position, I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that he was respected. And so
Okay.
because of that, he turned after a couple of times whenever he would come, I would stand back at the door and I would wait for him to come in and they would all get into I wasn't invited into the room. It wasn't my contract. But they once they got into the room and I would check and I would peek to see if he was set and he was square. And as soon as I think once he picked up that it was me doing that, then he would turn and he would look and he would nod and give me like a little nod, like he was cool. And I would step out of the shadows, like I would just move on, right? I just wanted to make sure he was good. Now, eventually, what happened, he turned to his right hand because there's always somebody that's carrying the stuff, right? There's always somebody that handles the purse strings and got the checkbook for the agency. And that was his director. And he turned to her one day and he said, "Get her for me." And they created a job as special assistant to the CIO
Right for
and
you.
they dropped me in it.
Just for
And
you.
that was that. I love that. It wasn't necessarily the longest lasting. I didn't have the biggest influence. I didn't have a team under me, but it was the fact that within that agency, she created a job, then contacted another company that they had a contract with, told them to hire me under them so that they could hire me directly for him. So like all of those streams were pulled to get me in that job that never existed before so that I could work for him. And I was kind of like his ghostwriter because whenever he had to go forward to stand and present, he needed somebody to help him put the words together and I would write it up and I would hand it to him and he would go, "I got it." And then he would rewrite it in his own voice. And so I was behind the scenes. I didn't have a team and none of that kind of stuff. But I think I would just count that as my best job because I felt like he saw me for me and how I could make him better. And I really, really wanted him to succeed there. So yeah, that was the best one.
I love it. You know what? That's awesome. You know, it's been a great conversation tonight. Thank you for sharing all your experience and all
You're
the
welcome.
wisdom and gems you blessed us with. And you know, I look forward to continuing this conversation on, you know, other future episodes and other projects that we can have, you know?
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, reach out anytime. Happy to help.
I definitely will. Anything you want to leave our audience with, any words of advice, positivity, anything.
I'm just gonna say make sure that while you're building your life, that you see your life.
Uh,
I think one of the things that we can get so caught up in planning and running through training and looking for opportunities and getting our foot in the door and building our career, but take the time to see yourself. Just like you sit down and make goals for where you want to be 3 months from now in your career,
right.
what classes you're going to take next, and you have some kind of improvement program on your job or whatever, and you kind of planned out where you want to be next year or 6 months from now. Look at your own life and see where you are, because you can lose yourself.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you got to take care of yourself. Like, where are you emotionally? Where are you with your
Hmm.
relationship? Are you stressing too much? Are you
Stopping
getting
and smelling the
enough
roses, right?
right? Take a look at yourself. Are you biting off people's heads because you're too stressed about something else, or
Mm.
there's some things that you address?
Right.
So, because at the end of the day, that company is they can replace you in a minute.
Yeah.
You could be in today and out tomorrow. You could be totally healthy today and totally, disabled tomorrow. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you see who you are. And if you need to grow as a person, there's always opportunity for us to learn how to process emotions, how to communicate better. You find yourself getting too impatient, if you're getting too anxious, if you're getting angry for no reason, like there's always those little hidden things that somehow bubble up and manifest in ways that you don't understand. So just, take the time to see yourself. And if you can't see yourself, find somebody in your circle that can like tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I think you need to chill. You need somebody that's going to tap you on the
Indeed.
shoulder every now and then, say, hey, you know what, your
You
breath
need that
stinks.
one person to, to keep,
Yeah.
kind of keep us in check.
Right, exactly. And they may not have your answer, so don't look for somebody else to heal you for you.
Right.
Like, heal yourself for yourself. Get yourselves together for your future. Like, what you do for yourself now is going to help your future. So take the time to see yourself while you're while you're doing life, see your life too.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's awesome.
You're
Needed
welcome.
that. But yep, that's gonna wrap up our first episode, our historic episode of Right Now Radio. Thank you again, Miss Phipps. And to all y'all have a good night.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye.